Iran's overseas assets, forbidding them from using the international banking system, putting restrictions on their diplomats. There were pretty severe international sanctions as a result of the hostage crisis. And Khomeini turned around and he said this: the revolution is not about the price of watermelons. We just don't care about the economic pain that is imposed on us. The revolution is far more important than that. So here's the basic message, that when you're looking at Iran, it's not nuclear weapons, it's not even their behavior, it's not cost or benefit. Our real problem is the regime itself. Again, a democratic regime in Iran, a more or less free regime in Iran is not going to persecute its own people. It's not going to get engaged in international terrorism, and I don't believe it's going to be pursuing nuclear weapons, because even Iraq, which was the immediate threat, is no longer doing so. Let's remember the precursors here. We have rarely dealt in the West with ideological regimes before, at least not since Hitler was in Germany. Even Stalin was no longer really an ideological leader. The Soviet Union had become a more or less ordinary power by the time of Stalin's death, and certainly when Khrushchev and Brezhnev were in power, it had become a corrupt kleptocracy. This is a regime in Iran that is based on an idea. It's not based on an idea of freedom, it's based on an idea. And that idea is called Velayat-e-Faqih. Velayat-e-Faqih means literally the rule of the jurisprudence, of the supreme jurisprudence. In other words, the dictator of one man, of one cleric. The supreme leader in Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, has absolute power over the armed forces. He can dismiss the president. He can dismiss the parliament. He does not have to give accounts to anyone. And this is the system that they put in place after Khomeini made the revolution. Natek Nouri, who's pictured here, was a one-time candidate for president, Majlis speaker. Majlis is their parliament. And he said this. He said, the legitimacy of the regime does not lie with the people. Those who say the legitimacy of the leader, the supreme leader, depends on the popularity. His popularity, people don't understand. Our regime gets its legitimacy from God. Now, I don't think there is any other government, certainly in the free world, that is based on this type of idea. Now, we say in America that our freedoms are given by God, but we don't say that our system of government is given by God. The system of government is made by men, and the people who govern us are accountable through elections. That's not what they believe in Iran, and we need to remember that. We focus an awful lot on this guy, all right? And clearly he's a very clever and entertaining and dangerous psychopath. But the truth is, he differs from other members of the regime only in terms of his style, the style of his leadership, not really in his substance. So we would be wrong, however objectionable he is, to focus too much on him or to believe that if only he were not there, everything would be okay. I'm sure you're aware there were presidential elections in Iran in June. And I say elections with quotes because all of the candidates who are allowed to run must be approved by the Supreme Leader and by the Guardians Council. It's kind of as if you had one political party here in the United States that decided who could run for every single political office in America, you know, from county sheriff to judge to United States Senate representative or President of the United States. That's what they have in Iran. So here are the candidates who ran against Ahmadinejad. All right. Probably the most moderate of them all was this man. He's wanted by Interpol for murder and for terrorism. He's the former commander of the Revolutionary Guards. He ran as a kind of conservative nationalist, a pragmatist who wanted to have the Islamic Republic be more efficient, a bit like a Gorbachev, if you wish, but without the turban. So this was one of the candidates, one of the alternatives in these wonderful elections. The next one was Karoubi, and Karoubi is a former Majlis speaker, head of the parliament, and he has been a long-time personal friend and political ally of the supreme leader, Khamenei. So there's another great choice that you have. And the third choice, of course, who we've heard a lot about, is Mr. Musavi, who is the man who sparked the Green Movement in Iran, the protests after this failed election. And I tell you, again, we make an error to believe that the elections in Iran themselves, under this current regime, could have brought any kind of change. If Musavi had been elected, I guarantee you, and all of my Iranian sources have insisted on this, if he had been elected, nothing would have changed in Iran. This man is almost literally a son of Khomeini. Okay, he's of the same family as Khamenei. He was the prime minister under Khomeini from 1981 until 1988. Okay. After that, he served as advisor to the next two presidents. He has been an integral part of the power structure since the very beginning of the Islamic regime. If he had been allowed to win the election or the selection, he would have put a happy face, a smiling face on the regime, but the regime would continue to be what it is and would continue to follow the poor policies that it's following. He got a lot of play here in the West and inside Iran as a reformer. People pointed to his wife, Zahra Rahnavard, because she was a university chancellor. They said, this is a very modern, wonderful thing. Here's a woman with a professional career. She's independent of her husband. This is the face of the new Islamic Iran. Must be pro-Western and all the rest. And of course, they opposed that image to the image of Ahmadinejad and the bag. But Musavi's wife, while she might talk the talk of being some kind of liberated modern woman, she walks the walk of the Islamic Revolution. This is her just a few months before the election, walking across the American flag and the British flag. So we need to learn a little bit more about who these characters are in the Islamic Republic before we jump to conclusions that one might be better than the other and might be able to actually reform the regime in any kind of meaningful way. Again, here's more about Musavi's background. He was one of the people who promoted the foundation of Hezbollah in Lebanon in the 1980s and said Hezbollah would be a fighting force against Israel, and we need to do this. This is why they were engaged in war against Iraq. Okay? Of course, there was no secret during the elections who was actually behind him. These are two former presidents, Khatami on the left and Rafsanjani on the right. And here's some just details about their particular CVs. Rafsanjani, who began as a poor village trader, merchant, became a cleric, later on is now undisputably the richest man in Iran. He's worth probably in excess of $10 billion. How that came about in the past 30 years, nobody knows. But he spent a lot of money trying to get Musavi elected because he would like to see the continuation of the Islamic Republic, which guarantees his own personal power. Of course, he has been close to Khamenei from the very beginning. He was responsible for putting Khamenei in place as the successor to Ayatollah Khomeini in 1989. Khatami, the former president, he was president from 1997 until 2005. Khatami was widely welcomed in the United States and elsewhere as a reformist. He was going to change the way the regime was operating. I can remember bringing one of my board members, who was a Shiite Iranian Ayatollah, but a dissident Ayatollah, Mehdi Rouhani. I took him to the Defense Intelligence Agency